My mom went public. She told the whole family that she now believed and still believed that Yeshua was the promised Messiah. And my dad told her to either renounce that faith or he would leave her. I was furious with my mom for breaking up our family. I thought she had betrayed not just her people, which was big enough, that's a big issue. To believe in Jesus and Yeshua was a betrayal of the Jewish people, I thought. But to break up her family over this seemed ridiculous to me. Both my parents were Holocaust survivors. My dad had lost his first wife, 5 children, his parents, 4 of his siblings at Treblinka and Auschwitz. My mom was a German Jew, and she had lost her parents, her brother, grandparents at Auschwitz. They both made their way as fast as they could to West Berlin. My dad had remarried. His wife died in childbirth. And there he ran into my mom, who was working as a nurse at the hospital. My dad had a premature baby. He didn't know how he was going to raise this child without a wife. And so he arranged for my mom. He went to her and said, "I need you to marry me." And my mom agreed, really for the sake of the child. When she was 12 years old and Hitler came to power, my mom was placed in an orphanage. And it was run by Lutheran deaconesses, sort of like Protestant nuns. And these Lutheran deaconesses were very caring for her. And they would also send her to the rabbi every afternoon. When they were teaching Bible to the kids in their orphanage, they sent her to the rabbi for Hebrew school, for religious training. However, when she was 16, because of the testimony of these women, she had become a follower of Yeshua herself. When my dad asked my mom to marry him, he knew that she believed in Yeshua, but once they were married, he told her that if she ever told anyone about her faith, or if she ever practiced it openly, he would divorce her. And so my mom became a secret follower of Yeshua from that day after World War II, about 1947, up until 25 years later. In 1950, they moved to the United States, and that's where I was born, in the Holy Land of Brooklyn. And living in Brooklyn, I was raised in an observant Jewish home. In my home, we spoke Yiddish, which was the language of Eastern European Jewry. We wore kippah, we kept kosher. We were very committed to the state of Israel as a family. When I was a freshman in high school, apparently my parents were starting to have some trouble in their relationship, and it caused my mom to seek out a Messianic congregation in Brooklyn, and she began to attend there, and she was being taught Bible studies by a woman named Hilda Kozer. And ultimately my mom went public. She told the whole family that she now believed, but was openly believing, that Yeshua was the promised Messiah. And my dad told her to either renounce that faith or he would leave her. And so my dad left her and ultimately divorced her and then moved to Israel. I was furious with my mom for breaking up our family. I thought she had betrayed not just her people, which was big enough, that's a big issue. To believe in Jesus and Yeshua was a betrayal of the Jewish people, I thought. But to break up her family over this seemed ridiculous to me. My sister and I once had to pick up my mom from Bible study. We were in my sister's car, and we went there and, of course, met Hilda Kozer. She came out to talk with me and meet me, and something hit me at that point was that maybe I should engage with her, and if I could convince her that Yeshua wasn't the Messiah, this Bible teacher, then my mom would give up on this narishkeit, this foolishness that she was in. And so I actually began to go to Coney Island and meet with Hilda Kozer to discuss Messianic prophecy. And I had a book that gave me all the answers about what these passages meant. And we began to study Messianic prophecy and argue about it. And that's really what we would do. We'd have the Bible there in front of us, and we'd be standing over it and arguing over the meaning of passages. Even though I felt I had the official good answers and interpretations of some of these passages of Messianic prophecy, I thought her explanations seemed to fit better. They seemed to make more sense. Well, one day, Ms. Kozer asked me what did I do when I sinned? And I told her I really don't sin very much. She said, what do you mean you don't sin? And I said, well, I was a high school student when everyone else was trying drugs. I wasn't. When young people were sleeping around, I wouldn't do that. I wanted to be a nice Jewish boy, get good grades, go off to school, become a famous attorney. That's what my goal in life was, and I was not really a bad kid. But she said, but everyone sins, and she asked me if I ever told a lie. I said, everyone lies. She started asking me questions from the Ten Commandments, and I said, yeah, I've done that, I've done that. And so she said, so what do you do for your forgiveness? And I said, well, I fast on Yom Kippur. That's enough. And she showed me from Leviticus 17, where it says, I've given you the sacrifices on the altar to make atonement for your souls. And she was really emphasizing that there needed to be a sacrifice to experience forgiveness. And I said, well, that was when the temple stood. Now the temple's destroyed and we can't do that. The outcome was that she showed me Isaiah 52:13 through 53:12, which I knew officially, what I'd gotten the interpretation that this was about Israel, not about the Messiah. But as I read it, it seemed that the suffering servant wasn't Israel, because this suffering servant died for the sins of my people, it says. Well, how could Israel die for Israel? That didn't make any sense. And so it seemed like it was the Messiah, and it talked about how all we, like sheep, have gone astray. All of us have turned to his own way. But the Lord laid on him the iniquity of us all. It says that he was pierced through for our iniquities, and the chastisement for our well-being was upon him. And she was saying the perfect sacrifice for atonement for our sins was in the Messiah, Yeshua. She asked me that day if I would pray about this and ask God to show me if Yeshua was the Messiah. And I said, I don't need to, because he's not. And she said, well, then what are you afraid of? And so that night I actually prayed about this for the first time. And it was the single worst prayer in the history of prayer. It was something like, I know Yeshua isn't the Messiah. I know Jesus isn't the Messiah. But if he is, and I know that he's not, would you show me? And I know you won't, because he isn't. Amen. Long story short, my mom was always inviting me to services, and I would always say no. And so she told me there was going to be a film about Israel, and I thought, well, I will go to that one, because if it's about Israel, it can't possibly have anything to do with Jesus. What does he have to do with Israel? And so I went, and it was a film that began by talking about how the Hebrew prophets, the Jewish prophets, had foretold the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. I was, and still am, a very strong believer that God restored the Jewish people according to the prophets. I'm going, yeah, I agree with this. And then the second half was how those same Hebrew prophets had foretold the Messiah, and it started recounting all these messianic prophecies that I had talked about with Hilda Kozer. And I began to think, what a hypocrite you're being. The part you like about the prophets foretelling the restoration of Israel, that you agree with. And then this part where you don't agree with it, you fold your arms and get really angry. And I thought, if the prophets foretold that Yeshua was the Messiah, then even if I was the only Jew ever to believe in him, I would still be a good Jew, because that's what the prophets foretold. Well, the film ended, and these thoughts were rushing through my head, and a man who had come to show this film got up and gave something I had never heard of before. It was an invitation to believe in Yeshua. And I thought I would never do this in front of all these people. And then he said, now everyone bow your heads, and this is the only ones that will ever know is the Lord and me and you. And so if you're ready to put your trust in Yeshua as the Messiah, well, raise your hand. And I thought I would never raise my hand in front of all these people. But then, lo and behold, there it was. My hand was up. And I thought, I'll never tell a soul. This is just God, this guy, who I'll never see again, and me. And before I could get my hand down, he said, I see that hand in the back. And one of my mom's friends sitting in the front row, she was there, and she kind of peeked. And before I could get my hand down, she saw it was me, and she said, it's Michael. So in front of about 250 people, I was completely busted. There I was. everyone knew it was me. And afterwards, my mom was so excited. I said, "Get back, Mom. I'm not going to be a fanatic like you." Miss Kozer came up and wanted to give me a Bible. And I said, "I have a Bible." And she said, "What kind of Bible?" "Well, it's got a silver cover. It's in Hebrew. It's got a lot of stones from Israel on it." She said, No, one with the New Testament." And she came running and gave me a New Testament and signed it lovingly, Hilda Kozer. And I had that Bible. But I told her I'm not going to be a fanatic. And my sister came that day with me, and she was so angry with me because several times she had said she was really considering becoming a follower of Yeshua, and I had talked her out of it. And she said, "You rat." She was so angry with me that I had made this decision and kept her from it, which, by the way, that afternoon, she became a follower of Yeshua as well. Previously, I had been so focused on one day going to an elite college and then a great graduate school and becoming an attorney and becoming the next generation of great attorneys in New York. That's really what I was expecting my life to be. And then that didn't mean anything to me after I became a follower of Yeshua. I wanted to study the scriptures. I wanted to teach the scriptures, and I wanted to tell all people, but especially my people, about the Messiah. That was the big change of focus that happened in my life after I became a follower of Yeshua and became what I guess I would have termed a fanatic. I don't know where you're at, but if you're watching this and you think, "I don't know if I'm really interested in this," just the very fact that this is before you, it might be the time to investigate, to examine the scriptures, to see what the Hebrew Bible actually says about the Messiah, to maybe offer a lame prayer like I did, that would say, "God, if Yeshua really is the Messiah, then show me." Because I'm convinced that when we put our trust in Messiah, he gives a sense of purpose, meaning, significance. Don't miss the opportunity to investigate and see if Yeshua really is the Messiah.